So with the Advisory Council, the President signed the executive order during our U.S.-Africa Leader Summit back in December 2022. And so we were looking for a way of us to really engage the diaspora, the African diaspora, to be specific, and find a way to bring them involved in the summit. And so, a number of colleagues and I kind of, put our heads together at the time. I was the director for Africa at the White House, working on the summit. And so we thought about ways in which we could bring in the diaspora, but also create something that was substantive, to really just, I think, officially find a way to work with the diaspora to strengthen our partnership between U.S. officials and the global African diaspora. And so we codified a specific engagement event during the summit. The Vice President spoke at the African Diaspora Young Leaders Forum, which is a part of the summit, and then announced that we will create a council that would be included of members of 12 individuals to advise the President on ways in which we can engage the diaspora community writ large, work on different initiatives, different programs. And so that was the creation of the council, myself and some colleagues and I at the White House. And of course, it was an interagency effort, as we say, among the U.S. government, working with different agencies across the government, State Department, Department of Commerce, USTR, et cetera, to really put together a platform and a framework for the U.S. to officially engage the diaspora, within our government landscape and of course our foreign policy landscape.
This appears to be different. Is it a new way of the White House looking at Africa in a different perspective and engaging the continent and its diaspora?
One of the things that the President focused on during the summit was partnership. Right. And so working with our African partners in a way that is mutually beneficial. And in fact, one of the quotes that he used in his speech was that we're not just focused on what we're doing in Africa, but what we're doing with Africa to achieve global objectives. And so you'll see that he announced that, we support, Africa being a part of the G20. And so that was one of the announcements during the summit, because we really believe that in order for us to achieve our global objectives, we have to work in partnership with Africa. And when it comes to the United States, we have a very unique relationship with the continent, right? Our people-to-people ties is unique, and it's our strength. And so the diaspora is our source of strength. And so we're now looking at ways in which we can officially codify that strength, right, within our U.S. government framework and say, we have an African diaspora, right? African immigrants, those who came here through the slave trade, right? They are a part of the diaspora. It's our strength. It's our way for us to really work on people-to-people engagement. And so it's not new, but I would say that it's a way that we are looking to amplify that aspect of our foreign policy.
I saw you a few times engaging in investment forums where you shared your thoughts. How has been the response from the African diaspora so far?
Yeah, and so, I look at Ghana, where my family's from. Great example when it comes to diaspora engagement. You'll see that in the past, I would say about 3 to 4 years, there's been a major push, this, return to home, campaign that, the government of Ghana has been running. And it's really a call for members of the diaspora to go back home, to invest, right, to reconnect with their ties. And I think that this is the time. We're in a very unique time frame where, there was a number of articles, and it said that one, the world is becoming more African. Right. And it's true. The world is becoming more African. We all know the statistics, right? With the youth balls, the population trends, the world is becoming more African. And so what better way to leverage those people-to-people ties to encourage the diaspora, where we have a unique, specific relationship with our African partners, to say, if you want to start a business, look at the continent. Right? It draws you back to your history, and it's an opportunity for you to also build your business. And so we're encouraging the diaspora to start businesses on the continent. We're encouraging educational exchange programs. These are all things that, like I said before, it really plays to our strength in the United States, right? That culture aspect, the people-to-people ties. And so I think it's a great opportunity for the diaspora to go back to the continent.
Do you think your office has come to stay, with the U.S. looking at a stronger partnership with countries on the continent? Do you see it? I mean,
I would surely hope so. I think, like I said before, I think it's definitely necessary. The time is right. There's lots of investment on the continent. Diaspora, all of the investment opportunities has not gone unnoticed by the diaspora. right? And so it's a unique opportunity, unique time frame. The way our council is established is that it's actually established within the State Department. And so, it's institutionalized within the State Department. And so most of our staff from the council itself are State Department employees. Now, the council members itself, the 12-person council, they'll rotate every 2 years. Just to give, I think, a different opportunity for different people in different sectors to participate and provide recommendations. But the council itself is institutionalized within the Department of State.
So talk to me. You just returned from Ivory Coast.
Yes.
Where you watched some matches at the ongoing AFCON. I understand this is the first time officially that the U.S. has sent a delegation to the AFCON, or the African Nations Cup. How was it for you going back to Ivory Coast?
Yeah.
And what did you experience there?
It was an amazing trip, and I think a very unique one because, it was a sports delegation that we sent back. Typically, when we send delegations, it's to focus on different aspects, but this was for sports. And sports diplomacy is great. One, because sports is a unifying factor. It brings people together. And when we're talking about strengthening people-to-people ties, what better way to showcase that than sports? And, the African Cup of Nations has, a wide number of countries, competing against each other. There are different countries that are represented there. And so we thought, for our first event of the council for the year, why not bring together some athletes who are part of the diaspora, with a few U.S. officials, travel to Abidjan. We attended the opening ceremony, which was amazing, by the way, phenomenal production. The opening match was amazing. But then we also took the time to meet with some young leaders. The athletes hosted some sports clinics, basketball clinics, soccer clinics, with young women. And coincidentally, the delegation was full of almost women.
Right.
We had, WNBA All-Star and Hall of Famer Lisa Leslie with us. We had Chineye Agumike, WNBA player, ESPN host, and a member of our council also traveled, and Crystal Dunn, U.S. soccer team star. So it was great because you don't always get females at the forefront of sports, but we had 3 really great examples of sports icons, travel to the continent. For Lisa and for Crystal, it was their first time on the continent. So, phenomenal experience for them to travel back to the continent and to travel for an event like AFCON. And so we had a wide range of meetings with civil society as well as government officials. And it really was an opportunity for us to talk about cultural and sports diplomacy, what that means in our foreign policy framework, and how important it is, right? It shouldn't be overlooked. I think it's a great way for us to engage. And so I think, when we put together the delegation, it started as a small idea and then, I think just evolved into something that was truly very meaningful. The athletes had a great time. I myself, it was, I think, my first soccer game in person, or football game,
right.
See on the continent, football game. I had never watched a football match in person, so it was my first time, but it was a great experience.
I know, from home, your parents might like football,
yes.
But for the basketball players, they are, prime athletes.
Yes.
How did they enjoy it? What feedback did they give you?
They were really impressed with, I said, the production of AFCON writ large.
Right.
But they enjoyed the game. And being basketball players watching a soccer match, I think was different. It was great. We all had a really good time. Lisa Leslie, African American, Chineye of Nigerian descent. So we all have, and I think more importantly, that's the strength of the diaspora, right? I'm of Ghanaian heritage. Someone's of Nigerian heritage. Someone maybe from, the enslaved, the trade route, but. When it comes down to it, we are all part of the diaspora. And the diaspora, in a sense of the collective diaspora, right? Recent African immigrants, first generation, second generation. And we had an amazing time working, with the different, African partners that were there as well.
So what would you say were the major takeaways for you while you were down there in terms of the engagements you had with the sports community, the civil society, the government officials you met?
Sports is a unifying factor. Sports and cultural diplomacy is something that I think the U.S. does a great job at. when it comes to sports, our culture is very rich, especially when it comes to the African diaspora. And so we want to leverage that. It's our source of strength. And we saw that. There was an event we had at our U.S. Embassy in Abidjan with the three sports icons. And Lisa Leslie got quite emotional because one of the students talked about, how much of a role model, she has been to them, over the years, because she's broken certain barriers, in her line of work as, coming from a single person, family, being raised in, California, et cetera. And they talked about how much she's inspired them, but she got emotional because she was saying that her being here has actually inspired her. Right, coming to the continent for the first time, listening to the things that they had to say, inspired her. While they thought that she was, inspiring them, and so these are the things that I think, really, strengthens our foreign policy. Right, those people-to-people ties and how we can leverage these relationships, right, to move the needle on some of the tougher issues that sometimes we have trouble, moving along with.
As you engage the African diaspora, what are some of the things you're looking at implementing this year?
So, we're excited the council's up and running. It's only been up and running for a few months now. Right. But we already have a list of priorities that we're hoping to move forward. We're looking at the education space, right? So how can we encourage exchange programs between the diaspora and the continent? I was just talking to a colleague that, historically, there's always been a strong connection between, African scholars in the United States. In fact, some of the former heads of state on the continent, some of them, went to school here.
Right.
Kwame Nkrumah went to Lincoln University and HBCU. So there's always been that historical connection when it comes to education in particular. It's an area where we want to leverage, right? And I think amplify. And so looking at exchange programs between African universities and HBCUs, how can we encourage more cross collaboration? Right, talked about sports, talked about the sports cultural diplomacy side of things, also the trade and investment space. There's a youth bulge on the continent. Looking at the digital sector, right? When it comes to emerging technologies, how can we leverage that? As the world is becoming more African, Africa's continent is also very young. And the United States is a leader when it comes to technology. And so how can we also encourage collaboration in that space in particular? But I would say these are some of the areas where we're focusing on now, at least in the short term. Of course, there's a lot more to do when it comes to engaging the diaspora and our African partners. But I would say at least for these core spaces, we're looking at seeing how we could do more in that space. But of course, there's always more to do in the human rights and governance space as well. In everything that we do, right, the society has to be, I think, free and fair, has to be right. Government policies have to work. And so that's also always going to be a priority, in terms of creating the foundation for education, for trade and investment, for the digital transformation space as well.
And the current president of Sierra Leone attended school here as well.
He did as well.
Right.
Yeah. So there's this connection when it comes to education in particular. And so I think that has been a recurring theme for me with the council. Everyone talks about education. And so it's something that we're looking very closely at.
Talk to me about investment, because Africa usually will be telling you that, okay, we need more partnership, we need more investment. It's not about aid. They want more investment in their countries to create the opportunities for the youth. So is there anything you were looking at in terms of investment?
Yeah, and something I said earlier was that we're looking at not just what we're going to do in Africa, but with Africa.
Right.
And so we're at that phase right now where partnership is key. There are a lot of great Black-owned businesses in the United States, great businesses that are owned by African immigrants, And so what better way to partner with some of those businesses, right? Some of them are looking at ways to expand those businesses. Why not go to the continent, right? And so we're encouraging that across different sectors, whether it's agriculture, whether it's technology, or even merging, agriculture and technology, right? There's a lot of opportunities there, and the youth being at the forefront of everything. There's something that I always say is that the currency of this generation is Africa's creativity. Africa's youth, they're very talented, very creative. In Nigeria alone, the amount of talent coming out of Nigeria is astounding, right? And so, the ideas are there, right? The content is there. And then when you partner that creativity and the content, with some of the great work we're doing here in the United States, you get something amazing. You know, I always say some of the great fintech ideas started in Nairobi, Kenya. You know, there's a lot of great talent when it comes to technology in Kenya, for example, right? And we are doing a great job in that space. And so as we partner with Africa, whether it's Africa's youth, whether it's a diaspora-owned business, a Black-owned business, I think it's guaranteed to really create something that is going to be, you know, amazing, but to also achieve global objectives, right? Solve global challenges, solve global problems.
Now, talking about Africa, you know, as I said, they're always looking for opportunities to partner. But are the businesses here, like the Black-owned businesses, businesses owned by Africans in the diaspora, are they willing to go back? Are they willing to engage? Are they willing to partner in order to expand the business so there would be a win-win situation?
There's always been a perception about going back to the continent.
Right.
You know, and that's something that, you know, is very real. And sometimes there are businesses and whether it's Black-owned businesses or diaspora-owned businesses who are a bit risk-averse because they're not sure the nature of the environment, the culture, you know, what the rules of engagement are, et cetera. So there are some businesses who are risk-averse. However, there are platforms, there are initiatives and programs to help break those boundaries. And I think that it's also our job to do that. Right, to talk about some of the interests and the positive things, right, when it comes to investing on the continent, right, to, you know, I think help with some people who may be a bit, you know, risk averse and who may think that, well, what am I getting into? But I always say, if you want to know more about the continent, travel. You know, take the risk to travel. You know, travel there for the first time. Get your feet on the ground. We have amazing programs, chambers of commerces across the continent, our embassies who are available, who are open. The U.S. Department of Commerce, you know, they have an office to help with that. But there's a number of programs, and the council, a part of the things that we will be doing is speaking about some of these opportunities, right? In addition to the challenges, right? But we shouldn't always allow the challenges to overshadow the opportunities. There are certainly more opportunities than there are challenges when it comes to investment.
What impact do you see your office having in the diaspora in terms of engagement and partnership with Africa?
One thing is that there hasn't been a concentrated effort on collectively engaging the diaspora from the U.S. government side. Right, and so we're working on that. We're working on different strategies to engage the diaspora. The U.S. government is huge. In fact, I had a call yesterday with one of the agencies, and they were saying, how can they help the council, you know, push the agenda forward? You know, start with the diaspora engagement strategy, right? And also, how can we go to the diaspora? Right? How can we go to the community? You know, cities like Houston with the large diaspora population, cities like Atlanta, right? Who many are African American, but they want to connect with the continent, right? And so we're already thinking about programs and events and opportunities for us to go to them, and not just thinking in the four corners of being in Washington, D.C.
Right.
Because oftentimes we get so caught up in the DMV area, but we have to go out there. We have to go to Denver, go to Houston, go to Atlanta, go to Minnesota, these cities where we have, you know, New York City, where I'm from, where there's densely populated African immigrants, the African diaspora, they're there. We go to them and also hear what they have to offer. They have ideas. They have lots of things that they may want to share that could also be included in some of our recommendations.
What are your expectations for this year for your office?
You know, this year's, you know, the year just started, but it's almost over. It's short, you know, but like I said, I think, you know, one, ensuring that the council, the members, you know, the establishment of the council, we can engage the diaspora community, right? Let them know that, you know, we're here to work with them. We're here to engage the diaspora, and we're here to partner with the continent, partner with the continent. So we're thinking about a trip to the continent very soon, sometime this year, taking the entire council to the continent. For some, it will be their first time traveling to the continent. For others, they have a wide range of experience working with the continent, right? But that's what makes it, I think, unique and makes it great. So the engagement piece is important, going to some of these cities, engaging with the different communities, which is also very diverse. right? The diaspora community of Ethiopia is very diverse from that of Ghana. It's very diverse, but that's what makes it unique. That's what makes it amazing. That's what makes it great, right? But getting that uniqueness all under one umbrella and engaging with them. And also the initiative piece, coming up with something very concrete that will be tangible, where we can say that this was a recommendation that came out of the council, for us to leverage and amplify our diaspora engagement, whether it's in education, whether it's in tech, whether it's in entrepreneurship, whether that's in sports diplomacy, right? These tangible things I think are important in addition to showing up, right, and engaging with the community.
But are these members of the Presidential Advisory Council on Diaspora Engagement enthusiastic themselves about engaging the continent? Because sometimes, like you said, there are misconceptions, there are barriers, there are sometimes suspicions that, okay, well, they don't like us and all that. How are they engaging with you in your office?
I think they're all very excited, and they all accepted the opportunity to serve on the council. And as they serve on the council, I think for them it's also a learning experience. But these are all 12 individuals who are, also icons in their field as well. We have Viola Davis, who's an EGOT. We have former ambassadors. So they're experts in their field. They know Africa. They're interested in Africa. They want us to work with Africa. And so they're also a sounding board for us in their fields. And they all come from very unique backgrounds. We have professors, we have athletes, we have ambassadors. And so we're excited about how diverse the council is. And that's also a replication of how diverse the diaspora is, right? And how important it is for us to engage with a diverse audience. And so they bring unique backgrounds that helps us with our engagement, but they're very much excited, very much willing to get running. Like I said, we'll be convening very early in this year to discuss priorities and things to focus on throughout the year. But the AFCON delegation was our first event for the year. We were really excited and very pleased with the outcome of that. And I think the opportunity to just travel early on in the year for an event that had to do with sports, I think was great for us.
Before we go, Deniece, what should those who will be watching you or those who will be listening to you, what do you think they should take away from your office, especially this year?
So one thing I would say is our African diaspora is a source of strength in the United States. And we want to leverage that. We want to ensure that engagement with the diaspora is at a very high level. And the president signed an executive order to put together a council to focus on the diaspora. That's a very high level. And so we are taking it very seriously. We are excited about it. We're excited about working with different partners to ensure that it continues to remain a priority for the U.S. government, for the administration. We're really pleased with what we've been able to do, and there's lots of work to do, but we want people to know that the diaspora is a source of strength. African immigrants have played a very crucial role in our foreign policy, in our domestic policy. African Americans have played a very critical role in those two spaces as well, and so we see that, we hear that. There's an executive order to establish this council because of some of those reasons, and so we're open and excited to working with different partners to ensure that we can leverage that, which would be mutually beneficial for our African partners and the United States.